So I would like to discuss a few of the names you mentioned last time. The first name you mentioned was Yuri Andropov.
Yes.
He was the chairman of the KGB who created the Fifth Directorate. Now, just to refresh people's memory, this Fifth Directorate of the KGB, their job was to stop the Freemasons.
The fifth chief directorate, that is the directorate officially tasked with the protecting the constitutional order in the Soviet Union. So is the basic state protected state protective department like this. So like in KGB, they have departments that were responsible for intelligence, for counterintelligence, for military counterintelligence, for the counterintelligence in the industry, and the first four. But this number fifth, that is responsible for the protecting of the constitutional order.
Right. So
and it has a lot of smaller departments within itself that were tasked with the different things. So, and one of them, yes, was tasked to counter the Freemasons. Yes.
Right, because in order to protect the Constitution, you can't let the Freemasons interfere.
Yes.
So so now this department, which was tasked to suppress the Freemasons, was most likely being run by Freemasons themselves.
Of course. Because the chief of the KGB was a Freemason, and the chief of the Fifth Directorate was a Freemason, and of course the chief of that particular department that was tasked with suppressing the Freemasons, of course, was a Freemason either.
Yes. So let me tell a little about the history of Yuri Andropov, and if there's any point that you would like to speak out about him, what you know about him. So I'm just going a little bit through his history. In 1937, he applied to become a member of the Communist Party, but there was a lot of questions about his heritage. You know, but eventually he was approved in 1939. Do you know much about the debate over his heritage?
I know that, I don't know much, but I know that something was not clear about his background. That's all I know.
Yeah. I think some people were saying he was from Jewish backgrounds in Finland or something. But anyway, then later on, he became known as the Butcher of Budapest. Okay, he was appointed as the ambassador to Hungary, and he initiated from 1954 to 1957 was the Hungarian uprising.
Yes.
Now, if this guy was a Freemason, Hungary is a very good place for him because Hungary has always been full of Freemasons, ever since
But let me stop you for a while, because you call that Hungarian uprising. In fact, it was not Hungarian uprising; it was the fascist uprising, because the Hungary was full of the Nazis who cooperate with Hitler's. But the problem is that Hitler's Germany was defeated completely, and there was a process of so-called denazification there. Not so much about the Hungary; they have about the same number of the fascists. But the attitude towards them was not as tough as in Germany, okay? And they attempted to build a socialism in Hungary without the suppressing much of the previous fascists, who were also appointed to some positions, because they basically they were all fascists. So they didn't have much people outside the fascist party in Hungary. So that's why Hungary was a bit, like. It was the attempt was to make it communist, but in fact the communists were obliged to hire a lot of fascists into their military, in the police, and in some state departments and so on. And at one point, these fascists, in the Hungary, they just attempted to make the uprising, And so that what you call the uprising of the Hungarian, it was in fact not the uprising of the Hungarians, that was the uprising of the fascists in Hungary.
So would you say now this event from 1954 to 1957, since this guy was a Freemason, you know, he was named the Butcher of Budapest because he killed so many people. So
Yeah.
I would assume that he probably didn't kill any Freemasons.
Of course not, because the Freemasons, in fact, they are against the fascists.
Right.
You know that the Nazi Germany was against the Freemasons, and the Freemasons were against Hitler. And as well, the Freemasons were also against the Nazis in Hungary. So that's why the aims of the communists and the aims of the Freemasons at that point coincided.
Yes. All right. So after this, he then did a similar thing. It was many years later. In 1968, it was called the Prague Spring in Czechoslovakia. Again, butchering people, keeping the Freemasons alive.
Yeah, probably.
Yes.
But you can't compare the what happened in Czechoslovakia in 1968, because that was more like a more liberal, okay, more liberal movement. But the one what happened in Hungary in 1956, that was the purely fascist. It's nothing to do with the with liberties or with how do you call that, liberalism. It was similar to Hitler regime that attempted to reinstall.
Yes. All right. So now let's see. There's another event in his history, which is quite interesting. I don't know if you have any comments, but in the 1970, he wanted to destroy the remains of Joseph Goebbels and probably Hitler along with it. Supposedly they had to, and he said he was worried about their tombs becoming a neo-Nazi shrine. So he destroyed supposedly the remains of Goebbels, and Hitler maybe was there as well. That happened, and then finally, also in 1970, a very interesting thing. He initiated a system of psychiatric wards all across the country in order to train the dissidents, right? This was a very famous program he started. And then in 1972 started the period of détente. Was a very famous period of Soviet Union trying to distance themselves from America. A lot of political games going on.
Yes.
Okay, now, finally, in 1975, Brezhnev had a stroke, and Yuri Andropov was one of the people to sit in for him while he was unable to rule. And there was a couple others. I just want to mention their names, and if those names ring a bell, if you have anything to say about these other people. Some of the other people, there was Andrei Gromyko.
Yeah. Gromyko, yes. That was the Minister of the Foreign Affairs of the Soviet Union and formerly ambassador in the United States.
Do you think this guy was a Freemason?
Not sure. I don't know.
Not sure.
Maybe.
Okay.
But I can't be sure.
I'm mostly just trying to check that my pronunciation is okay, because I can't pronounce these names.
Yeah.
Another name is Andrei Grechko.
Yeah, Andrei Grechko. Yes, that was the Minister of Defense. That was the formerly general at the time of the Second World War.
Yes. So if any of these names ring a bell and you say, yes, that guy was a Freemason, you just
no,
tell
this
me.
one you have to understand, the Freemasons are secret organizations, so you cannot know for sure who of them is the Freemason. But when it comes to Andropov and Bobkov, that is for sure, that is well known.
Okay. All right. So now I just want to jump to one other event, because this was actually important to my life. I was a child at this time. And in the 1979, the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan.
Yeah.
he was one of the heads of that. He said that his justification for invading Afghanistan was that Hafizullah Amin was supposedly a CIA asset. So he said, okay,
Yeah.
the CIA put this guy in, so we need to invade.
So, yes, they claim so.
Mm.
But in reality, I think that is a lie. But nobody knows it for sure. But they claim, yes, that Hafizullah Amin was the agent of the American CIA, but no proof of that. In any way, you also have to understand that the so-called invasion of the Soviet army into Afghanistan was so presented in the Western propaganda. But in reality, the Soviet government was reluctant to invade Afghanistan. And that was the repeated request from Hafizullah Amin, because he was by then the president of Afghanistan already, or at least the leader of the ruling party, and there was already a civil war in Afghanistan by then, inspired by CIA. And in fact, CIA supported the opposing party, not Hafizullah Amin. It supported the Mujahideen who fight against Hafizullah Amin. And Hafizullah Amin just cannot cope with the rebellion. That's why he repeatedly requested the Soviet army, the Soviet government to send the troops to help the Afghani revolution. Okay? And this one, the Western propaganda don't want to mention, because they want to portray the Soviet Union as an evil aggressor, as an evil invader. But in reality, the Soviet government was very reluctant to invade Afghanistan and to help Hafizullah Amin government. And finally, I don't know how they managed to convince the Soviet government that finally the Soviet government decided to invade Afghanistan. And the official pretext was that the Hafizullah Amin government actually requested the Soviet government to send the troops in to help the Afghani government. That was the official pretext. So the official reason for the Soviet army to invade Afghanistan was that the Soviet troops were sent there at the request of the legitimate Afghani government. The same like the Soviet troops in Syria, the Russian troops in Syria nowadays. They are there by the invitation of the Syrian government. So the Soviet troops in Afghanistan actually were there by the invitation of the Afghani government. But the point is, because the Soviet government hated Hafizullah Amin for his cheating, because there was a personal hatred between the General Secretary of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, Brezhnev, and Hafizullah Amin. The hatred was because of the following: because the original president of Afghanistan was Nur Muhammad Taraki, and Hafizullah Amin was he just plotted the coup d'etat, and he hijacked the power in Afghanistan. And for the previous president, Taraki was arrested and put under the house arrest. So when Hafizullah Amin reported to the Soviet government about the fact of the government change, would say, of the coup d'etat, he promised to the Soviet government that the Afghanistan will follow the same course of the revolution. Nothing will change. There will be still good relation between Afghanistan and the Soviet Union. And Brezhnev, who was the then de facto leader of the Soviet Union, requested Hafizullah Amin about the safety of the former president who was deposed, about the president Nur Muhammad Taraki. And Hafizullah Amin promised that there is nothing to worry, this man will be saved, he is just placed under the house arrest. But in fact, he ordered to kill him secretly. And when this became known to the president, to the Soviet, the then Soviet leader Brezhnev, it caused him just like a personal anger, because he felt cheated, because the Hafizullah Amin promised him that the former president will be saved, and he ordered to secretly kill him, and in doing so he also cheated the Soviet government. So the Soviet government decided to send the troops to Afghanistan formally to satisfy the request of the Afghani government, and in the same time they cannot accept Hafizullah Amin to be to continue to be a leader of the Afghani Communist Party. So they ordered the special troops to storm his palace and to kill him, and instead they installed another figure as a leader of the Afghani Communist Party. Babrak Karmal, that was hiding in the Soviet Union because he was a dissident figure. Okay, so they invaded the troops, and in the same time they changed the Afghani government, and they changed it in a very wrong way, because they didn't understand much about the political situation in Afghanistan, because the Afghani Communist Party contained in the two big groups, like two factions. One of them was called Parcham, and the other one was called Khalq. So, and they were so much different already that in fact they represented already two different parties opposing each other. They were still commonly perceived as the single communist party, but in reality they were like two factions waging war on each other. So instead, the former president Nur Muhammad Taraki and Hafizullah Amin, who killed him, they belonged to the Khalq party, to the Khalq faction. And the Babrak Karmal, that was the Soviet government attempted to install instead of them, belonged to Parcham faction, which is just another different party. So this caused a big confusion, in the Afghani leadership. So the Soviet government tried to reconcile the two factions of the Afghani Communist Party, the Khalq and Parcham, but in fact they were already two different parties de facto, and they can't be reconciled. And since then, in Afghani leadership, they have never been able to, to install a party that they really can control, because I don't know, it's very hard to explain, but what they did in Afghanistan, that was something like irreparable. And American CIA in the same time also supported the opposition to both communist factions. And the rest probably. So that's why you can't really call that as an invasion of the Soviet army into Afghanistan. It's more like an attempt to help, okay? But botched one.
Yeah, they messed it up. All right, can we jump ahead now? There's another thing happened in Poland in 1981. So there was no invasion of Poland, but he appointed, we're talking about Andropov, right? So he appointed two people to handle the Poland situation. And I probably won't be able to say their names. Wojciechowski, Jaruzelski, Czesław Czyskiczak.
That is the Polish, Jaruzelski, that is the Polish general.
These were two people that he appointed to handle the Poland affair. Do you have any stories to tell about that? What happened there?
No, because actually the Soviet government did not need to invade Poland, because the Soviet army was there anyway. Because you know that the Soviet army has a big presence in the Eastern Europe. In Poland, in Czechoslovakia, in Hungary, and in Eastern Germany. There were four big groups of the Soviet military there. So that means the Soviet army was always in Poland since the end of the Second World War.
Right.
They didn't need to invade it, But the Soviet government tried to handle Poland in a way that the Communist Party of Poland will always be in power there, and they will never lose.
Right.
Because
Maybe.
because by nature Poland is extremely a Russophobic country. It's always against
What?
Russia.
Ah.
Yeah, they hate Russians. I mean,
Yeah.
the Polish leadership for many reasons, and the only way that the Soviet government can maintain a good relation with Poland is to keep the Communist Party in power. Because once the Communist Party in Poland lose the power, there will be the crash of the socialist system. And the next step that extremely anti-Soviet and anti-Russian forces would come to power in Poland, and of course they will be supported by the American CIA, by the British secret services, and by other anti-Soviet elements, and Poland will quickly become an extremely anti-Soviet and also anti-Russia state, as it is now. You look at Poland now, what it is. That is exactly what the Soviet government actually afraid. That's why they try to keep Poland as hard as possible under the leadership of the Polish Communist Party, because the Polish Communist Party was the only power that can keep Poland friendly with the Soviet Union. So it's understandable.
Yeah. And there's probably this 1981 event. It probably had something to do with the neo-Nazis were probably not happy with the Freemasons.
No. It has nothing to do with the neo-Nazis, because Poland doesn't have that ideologies like in the Germany or in Hungary. No, they were not Nazis. They were just Polish nationalists with anti-Soviet and anti-Russian stance, I would say.
Okay, I get it. All right. So what about then? In 1982, Andropov started promoting Mikhail Gorbachev up into power. Do you think Gorbachev was also Freemason?
I don't think that Gorbachev personally was a Freemason. I think he was just a puppet of the Freemasons.
Okay. All right. What about this also? I think there was in 1982, after he became general secretary, he started a cleansing, and he arrested 14 ministers, 37 secretaries. And was this also to get rid of some people who were anti-Freemason?
I think so, yes.
Okay. There's a couple other names. This reform movement, there's a couple other names I'd just like to try to pronounce. Yegor Ligachev. Yes. Yegor Ligachev. You think he was a Freemason carrying on this?
No, I don't think so. I think he was just a person loyal to the Communist Party and honest.
And the last one, this Nikolai Ryzhkov.
This one is very hard to say, but that was the prime minister in the Gorbachev government. I think it's just a weak person who was just also a Freemasonic puppet, but not necessarily that he was a Freemason by himself, just a puppet.
Okay, thank you.